live chat, which is coming to you as always from my motorhome. And sorry, I've got a little bit of a problem with the gimbal, which just chose up to give up the ghost. And unfortunately, last gimbal gave up the ghost last month. So I'm not doing very well on the gimbal front at the moment. And the last one was still on guarantee, so it needs to be sent off. And I still haven't done it. And the current one, well, just gave up the ghost now, so I don't know. So I'm going to put down my, there you go. So you get a view of me like that. Is that okay? That doesn't look too bad, does it? And in today's video, my original intention was to talk about two pieces of news. One piece of news which happened on from Belarus, but then I thought, which I didn't reported anywhere in the English language, so I thought I'd do that. But I think really there's other news which relates to the situation in Ukraine, which is worthy of some type of commentary. So what I would like to do is to actually talk of that, and that is the news that 2 days ago that the mercenary commander, mercenary owner, I should say, Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has announced that unless he starts getting supplies, then he's going to pull his troops out of Bakhmut. So anyway, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the who he is. Then I'm going to look at his mercenary organization, and the third thing is I'm going to talk about is his what's the third thing I'm going to talk about? Is his threat. So that's in that order, right? So Prigozhin was born in 1961. In the summer of 61, he'll be 62 next month. He was born in June. And he has a criminal background. And in today, I even managed to find the record of his crimes. So his original, what he was sent to prison for. He was, first of all, as a youth, he was quite good at off cross-country skiing. And indeed, I understand he actually won something for the youth cross-country skiing around when he was about 16 years old or thereabouts. His father or stepfather, which his father left the family when he was very young, and so his mother met somebody else, and his stepfather actually used to train people in cross country skiing, trained him, and so he started doing that. Following that situation, he got himself into trouble. He was caught when he was around 17, 18 years old for theft, and he got a warning. However, and that was in November 1979. However, he then went on to doing other crimes, including violent crimes, which he was then sorry, I've got somebody here waiting for me who is so I've told her to clear off. So he was accused of doing got involved in a group which was involved in violent crimes, and these violent crimes were including break-ins and stealing from people at knife point. For example, in the charge sheet, we see how there was a lady who was robbed. What they did was she came up to her, asked for a light for a cigarette, and grabbed her around the neck and put a knife to it. The amounts of money which was stolen went up to as far as 1,000 rubles. Now, 1,000 rubles today isn't a lot of cash. Even at the official exchange rates, it's what, 10 euros or thereabouts. Then, at the time when you could have people earning only 200 or 300 euros, rubles a month. It was significant. But when you look at what they actually stole, it was quite absurd. For example, you can see them stealing things such as an umbrella and other things which you think was quite low value. In any case, he already had a suspended sentence against him, and he went to prison until after his sentence. He was due to be released in 1992. Given the fact that some of his victims must have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder for the rest of his life, I think he got off very lightly. He got a amnesty in 1988, and by 1990 he was out. At this time, his parents, or his stepfather and his mother, had started a small business, because then in those days this was all the rage, and they were selling hot dogs, or these sausages. Now you get a lot of people, I can recall in Russia in this time, hello Colin, lots of people actually doing this type of business. I mean, you got these sausages all over the place. I remember once buying a sausage from off the wall of the Kremlin. I thought, hey, I shouldn't have done that. I'll end up getting poisoned or something. But anyway, I didn't. So maybe there was nothing wrong with it. Now, one of the problems, though, in those days was there was so much the criminals. There was these petty criminals who would then prey on the small business people. Now, if you've ever read anything about how Lucky Luciano and other people of his age came about, they initially started off by attacking the pushcart sellers, so people with vegetables and fruit and things of this nature, and they would hold them, make them pay. I've forgotten the word in English. Now, what's the word in English? Haraj. Whatever that word is. Anyway, money not to smash the thing up, and this is the problem. You know lots of languages. You find out you can't speak any after a while. So anyway, so he had to pay, and he said he was paying $100. Now, if that is the case, $100 was then a huge amount of money. It would be for some people like a year's payment. So he was paying that to the people every month. Now, I don't know if he himself thanks Colin, protection money, and so the what happened was I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that somehow he possibly started doing this on the sort of thing. He started getting involved in other businesses. Now, at the time, he said that the money was piling up so much they didn't know what to do with it. By the mid-90s, he had a chain of supermarkets, so he obviously went into that business. He got the casino business. Now, one thing I recall very, very distinctly about Moscow was the signs for the casinos. Now, it doesn't mean to say that everybody was going to the casino, but I knew a couple of women who worked in the casinos, and maybe it was over advertised or something like that. It was just something that stood out in my mind. But anyway, this didn't quite work out for him, though, and he started off 3 restaurants, 2 sort of typically Russian ones, and there was a Jewish restaurant called 740, and this restaurant, these restaurants sort of got him into the catering business, and he set up a company called Concord, which is still in existence. I couldn't get on his website today before I did this. I did try though, and maybe the website's down, or maybe I couldn't get it for some other perfectly genuine reason. So around this time he met Putin. Now, the people around Putin are people from Petersburg. They are people who he grew up with. For example, his old judo sparring partner, Arkady Rotenberg, is the person who built the bridge to the Crimea. So he got billions out of being mates with Putin and going to the judo club with him in the 70s and 60s, mainly, late 60s and 70s. And so there is this cliche this clique around Putin. Putin, like Hitler, has shown himself to be very loyal to the people he grew up with. Indeed, the daughter of the former St. Petersburg mayor, Putin was his protege, Ksenia Sobchak. Although Ksenia Sobchak is openly in opposition, she's never found a way getting persecuted or prosecuted the way some other opposition people have been attacked. So from that point, he has been loyal, and it was his loyalty to Arkady Sobchak which brought him to the eyes of Yeltsin in order to make him president when Yeltsin resigned, because he was more or less chosen by the Yeltsin circle to be, I think, manipulated by them when he turned the tables on them. Anyway, I did talk about Putin in other videos, but I can do that another time, should it be necessary. Now, the Prigozhin gets the contracts for various things. Now, contracts are normally awarded, except in COVID times when we saw huge amounts of corruption in many countries, including United Kingdom or here in Poland and others, but where contracts were given to people's mates and for non-existent companies. But however, in Russia, that's how it happens all the time. And so somebody awards a contract and expects a kickback from it. And Prigozhin got 92% of all government feeding contracts. So for the army, for example, he also got for schools, and for example, even the schools, there was a case of dysentery about 4 or 5 years ago, which occurred because of the food. He got these contracts, and this has made him a super wealthy person. And now he founded this mercenary group called the Wagner Group in 2014 or thereabouts, with somebody else called Dmitry Utkin. Dmitry Utkin, born 1970, is the CEO of Concord, which is the now looks after the catering business that he's got. But Dmitry Utkin's also, I believe, in Wagner, and the name Wagner comes from Utkin's call sign, or so I am led to believe. Now, this is not the first private military contractor in Russia, or it's indeed, there was one earlier called the Slavonic Corps, which was founded by two people in Hong Kong, and the objective of the Slavonic Corps was to theoretically look after bases in Syria and other places. However, they upset the leadership in Russia, and they got on a plane, went back to Moscow, and in 2013, if I remember rightly, they were all arrested. Everybody who was in it was on that plane. So the idea of the mercenary army is actually illegal under Russian law. You can't form your own private army, or even some, as I understand it, some military contractor. If there's a lawyer who knows Russian law here, please write it down in the comment section. Now, Prigozhin has did this, or so he says, because he's changed his mind. He says he had nothing to do with it, and then he did have, and then he didn't have, and now he's been in uniform, so he clearly did have. He formed this in order to attract people from Russia to go off to Ukraine to take part in what I would call the second invasion, when the Lugansk and Donetsk, and the war that happened in 2014 after the invasion of Crimea. So we take the invasion of Crimea as being the first part, and then what happened in Donetsk and Lugansk as being the second part. So that's the idea of this. But having said that, Wagner has also got interests in Africa, and I get the clear impression that Wagner exists to get to further Prigozhin's bank account. Well, that's how businesses work, of course. But in the case of, we can take in the case very recently when in Bakhmut they captured Solidar, which has the largest salt mine. I think it's the third largest salt mine in the world. And that was something which he wanted for his business. But for example, in Sudan, they've been noted to go for gold mines. They've been noted to go for cobalt. I think it was in Central African Republic, and so he's trying to further his own business interests, seizing these properties. Hello, Dave, and thus enriching himself. Now, what's happened now? He's gone round after the invasion of Ukraine, gone round in prisons and other places looking for people. So this is very odd that somebody could actually go into prisons to get people out to become soldiers. Now, in the Soviet Union, or more to the point in Russia, everybody theoretically went at military training. Prigozhin didn't because he was in prison, so he missed out on it. And lots of people in Russia do miss out. I would say of my friends, most of them, maybe not those who grew up in the Soviet Union, but I'd say of people I know who should have done it in the 90s, for example, military training, I suppose they were born in the 70s, they didn't do it. And so I think there's more who didn't do it, who got out of it, than actually did it. I would say, just trying to think here logically amongst the people that I know. Now, a little bit, and maybe I ought to say at this stage what the difference is between the Russian army and NATO armies as far as supplying armies are concerned. Now, Prigozhin's stated on the internet, and he put a film up using all sorts of nasty words. In fact, the words, I didn't actually understand everything he said, and I had to ask somebody, and then I got laughter back, saying that who taught me such nasty words. And so he put up a video using all sorts of obscene language, saying that his troops are getting slaughtered because they're not getting supplied. Now, in NATO armies, it works like this, is that a unit will get the supplies which it is perceived by the people at the top that it needs. So if it were a NATO army saying it's being bled dry, I could sort of half believe it. But in Russia or in the Soviet Union, it was that each unit would get a similar amount. So if let's suppose you've got the 1st infantry unit gets, I don't know, 100 crates of something, the 2nd infantry unit gets 100 crates, and the 3rd infantry unit gets 100 crates. Now, if it were a NATO army and only the first one's actually in combat, it'd be the first one would get, say, 260 crates, and the other two would get 20 crates of ammunition or whatever it is that they actually need. So as far as ammunition's concerned, obviously food, everybody gets the same, but ammunition, it's dependent on what is required. Now, in peacetime, what happens often is the case is that it's often believed, and this is many government departments are like this, if they don't use something, then what will happen is that they won't get it the following year. So even when I was in the army, for example, towards the end of the financial year in March, the financial year, it's the 6th of April it ends. So in March you'd be going off to the range and you'd be allowed to fire things off in automatic, which you normally won't be. You're supposed to take single shots, not just blast away with full magazines. And that was done to make sure that the following year there would be a similar amount of ammunition. That's also why things like exercises often happened towards the end of the financial year, was to ensure, and I'm sure it's exactly the same now, is to ensure that the following year they'll get the same allocation. And so now it's Prigozhin, what he's complaining about. I am not party to the contract. I presume that Wagner, as a mercenary organization, has a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense or whoever, Ministry of Attack or whatever it's called. And and in it will be stated the terms and how much money it gets paid and how it gets paid. And that, I don't know what's written there, but I am assuming that it's getting its deliveries the same as every other Russian unit is. And as a result of that, so what Prigozhin is doing, he's found an excuse, but the excuse won't work with the Ministry of Defense because they know what the truth is. But it may work with the general population. As he's put it out on Telegram, then everybody already knows and everybody can see it, whether irrespective of if they know how the army is supplied in Russia or not. My interpretation is that he was aiming this at a beginning of maybe a power grab or something like that. I did suggest on my video on the drone that it may have actually been even more Nazi Russians than the current hardline Nazi types who actually did this drone to make it clear that they can act whenever they want. And I think in this case, this is what Prigozhin's doing. In every case when there was some resistance to Putin slammed hard. For example, we have the attack on Yukos in 2001, just because I've forgotten his name now. The boss at Yukos was, write it down up there because I've forgotten the name. It'll come back. He ended up in prison for what, 12 years or something. And the reason he ended up in prison because he sort of complained that Putin wanted to do something about corruption. Everybody that stands up against Putin ends up like this. The rule with Putin is the following. It's sort of the social contract. The contract is the following: that if I don't do anything, stay here, don't complain to the government, but the government will then leave me in peace. That is how it is for the Russians. The thing is, now Putin broke the contract by this war in Ukraine, and so therefore Russians have the right, you would expect, to protest. There was somebody last week, I think he wrote an article opposing the war, and he got a 25-year imprisonment. Now, if he does that and it's hardly seen by anybody and hardly known, how can it be that somebody like Prigozhin can do this? The reason is probably because he's too strong. Now, there have been reports of the Russian army and the Wagner Group fighting each other. I don't believe that that is actually the case. I mean, there may be sort of fights as there were between British and American service personnel during the Second World War, but I don't believe it's actually come to fights with ammunition or even weapons. I treat that with a sort of a bit of a pinch of salt. It's just too difficult to believe. But the fact of the matter must be that with this mercenary army that's got no discipline and nobody knows who the people are, and presumably the officers in it are professionals and they know what they're doing. It's just, everything is just so odd. Somebody joins a mercenary group and can end up with a payment about 5 or 6 times more than what the soldiers who actually join the army get. Presumably there's a bit of kudos from joining the army, which you don't get from joining a mercenary band, but I don't know. So the news, as far as I'm concerned, is I was thinking, is this the beginning of the end? Is this the sort of the point where this will turn around? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, today there were reports of people fleeing Crimea, but maybe there were, but we don't know. Oh, okay. So Colin's just filled me in the recent news that I didn't know about this, that everything's okay now because there's a 1-star general he can trust to report to. Okay, so he found an excuse to continue. I must point out another thing, which I actually did see this in some reported that if the Wagner Group pulls out, if any unit pulls out, that it would be replaced by another Russian army. It's not as if they're just saying, that's it, it's 5 o'clock on whatever, the 10th of May, and we're all going home. And they pack up and leave, and leave empty trenches. That it wouldn't be like that. There would be a handover. So Prigozhin now is, he's got his 1-star general. I don't know the fact, so I can't actually comment any more on that. But so, what did he want? Did he want by this more ammunition, or is it? It's hard to say. I'll say a few words about Bakhmut and about it. And I haven't been to Bakhmut, but the organization which I've been working, a humanitarian organization I've been working for, was active in Bakhmut until the end of January, I think it was. So I've got plenty of video from the place. But actually, being in, I was in Liman, and I've been at Slavyansk, for example, and you could see. You could hear and hear see at night. Anyway, you could see the flashes and things like that, and the boom, boom, and the dull thuds of the explosions and things like that. That was particularly at night. During the day, not so much. But so I mean, the place is completely destroyed. What is another thing which is strange, actually, because in the name of Bakhmut is it's probably a Tatar name, actually, but it dates before the revolution, and it was called Artemovsk or Artemisk in the Ukrainian. And so I don't know if I put the pronunciation on the right, the stress on the right, Artemovsk. So if you look at older maps, that's what you'll actually find. Noted for its wine, the wine which was produced. I can recall this is the first time I ever heard the name. In fact, it was I think Artemovsk Winery was I thought it was pretty awful myself. But the wine came from the grapes came from Crimea, and it was produced there. I don't know why it was produced there, not in Crimea, but this is how the Soviet Union worked, sort of totally illogically. Anyway. So, thanks so much for listening, and that is try and do some historical analysis as and when things actually happen of this nature, and it's all the best from me for the moment. Thanks for being with me today. I think I've got something planned actually for tomorrow. Yes, I do. I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I can remember it because I've seen the instructions from the Kremlin what to do for press organization. So thank you very much. Thanks to Brian. And yeah. Brian writes he wouldn't want to be caught in a dark alley with this dude. He looks mean AF. Presumably that you mean Prigozhin and not me. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Annie. I can't pronounce your name now. Annika. And everybody else who was here today. So, all the best from me in Poland.